right, welcome back to Mix with Greg. We have another episode here with another JP joining us, Jack Parsons from the Pretty Littles. G'day, Jack.
G'day, Greg.
How you doing, mate? We finally got there, I hope. I'm just going to cross my fingers on this one.
We're here. We're ready.
Maybe nobody's talking about how technically difficult it is to do these isolation recordings. I'd love to have you just sitting like right here next to me and we can just chat and then get straight into looking at this song. But this is the world that we're living in now. So how have you been, man, during this whole shenanigans that's been going down for the last couple of months?
I've been good. I've been one of the lucky ones. I haven't been really affected by it in any meaningful way, really, health-wise or anything. I mean, you know, I live down the beach now, so I've been able to get out for walks and surfs and spend a bit of time looking after myself a bit better. I've loved not having FOMO in my life. That really destroyed me. So to be able to just flick the switch on that and not feel like I'm missing out on stuff has just done wonders, I got to say. Spent a lot of time writing and working on songs probably more closely than I otherwise would have. In a funny way, I've kind of felt like a muso for the first time in my life because I've just been able to write. I haven't been under stress from anything, which, you know, I mean, that's sometimes it's better to write when you're under the pump a bit, for sure.
That point that you raised about feeling like you're a musician for the first time is really interesting because, you know, it's only kind of the select few that get to a point where they're not having to supplement their income with working or, you know, just to be able to survive. So this has kind of given us a chance potentially to just be like a full-time musician for the first time in our lives, I guess, would you say?
Or at least see what it's like. You get an idea, you know, it's still dreamland, but it's an interesting insight into what it might be like, really.
So yeah, the reason I got you on today, Jack, was to talk about your song Dondale that was released on Skeleton Run in 2018. Or I guess the best thing to talk about to begin with is, I guess, how you got inspired to write that song and come up with the lyrics. And maybe if you wanted to explain what the background of that song is and what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty simple process, really, in that I watched the Four Corners doco on youth detention in the Territory, and I knew it was going to be a heavy bastard to take in, but I don't think I quite knew how affected I would be by it. You know, it was just a Four Corners episode on the overrepresentation and treatment of Indigenous kids primarily up in the Territory in places like Dondale Youth Detention Centre. And, you know, this idea of rehabilitation in centres like that, how things like that can exist in places that are so punitive, and the guards were coming down really hard on these kids. And it was just such a terrible thing to watch. Pretty much as soon as I watched it, I sat down and I just started writing. I just wrote the words down straight away. It took 10 minutes. And then I reckon I picked up the guitar. The chords came out really quickly as well, but I just put it away. I didn't know what it was. I remember it wasn't until I started combing back through all the voice memos.
I hear keys rattling, dogs barking. That no-net fuck's got his knee on my back. Tells me I'm a risk to myself. Reckons he's looking after my health while he's stripping me naked. Thumb to my throat. Reckons he's a fighter. I reckon he's a coward.
I found that and I listened to it once. I nearly laughed. I was like, what is that? You know, like that, a lot going on. I felt affected by the song when I listened back to it in a way where it was really unexpected. One of those beautiful moments where you write something down and you go, don't know if I'm going to use that. Always end up using that. You know, as soon as I have that, I don't know it yet. I still fool myself. I still go, I'm not going to use that.
I definitely remember hearing it, and I guess on first listen, not paying as much attention deeply to the lyrics, I guess. But thinking it was so kind of uplifting sounding and there's definitely like a juxtaposition with what the lyrics are saying and the way that the melody and the song feels. It feels kind of a little bit more upbeat than I guess the lyrics would maybe necessarily warrant, I think.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think the music sort of bounces along a little bit, doesn't really indicate. But I mean, I think that's that great idea about people like Paul Kelly say sing the sad songs happy and sing the happy songs sad. I'm still getting people like friends say, "Oh, I've only just found out what Don Dale was actually about."
Can you remember any other kind of aspects of going into those Skeleton Run recordings? Wanting to approach it differently, or I guess what was the reason for you wanting to get me on board in the first place there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we'd started getting closer to your world through the Neighbourhood Youth Boys, and I always loved their recordings. Even going back to that Half a Man EP, and I remember we got you in for the first little session the weekend before we were going to record. We showed you all the songs we were thinking of, and it was probably fucking loud in that little room. And then I remember thinking, holy shit, we're ages off. And you were like a bit of you weren't giving much away in that little, what do you call it, pre-production. And I was like, oh fuck, what are we doing? Yeah, I think your presence helped us finish the songs off or get moving on the songs a little bit, where you weren't necessarily telling us, put a chorus in there, take a chorus out there. It was mainly like, I think that needs a bit more work, or we could do a little, I'm not sure if that's quite there yet, or whatever that was.
And back onto Dondale, was that, you probably have to jog my memory here, was that the first song that we ended up recording for the record?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all set up in Woodstock. It's always pretty cool being in a room for the first time. I can't quite remember how long we spent setting up. I remember maybe at the end of the first day we were pretty ready to get into it. And so we're all in the same room, and I think we got our levels and so I think we just thought, well, why don't we just warm up with Dondale? Why don't we just warm up with it? And I was doing my vocal live as well. I think we did one take. And we all looked around like, that was good. We did one more take, and then I think we used the first one, vocals and all. It was kind of disappointing in a way because that process was over so quickly. It's a weird disappointment. That song was just so ready to go. It's like a pimple that popped itself. It wanted to go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, Jack, thanks so much for joining me on this one today. I'm going to get stuck into just breaking down the song. Thanks heaps for coming on today, man. Really, really appreciate it.
No worries, Greg. Thanks for having me.
No dramas. We'll get stuck into the deconstruction.
How you gonna fix anything with those cunts in charge? They're the ones that need help, not me. I'm 15, he's 33. Turns the light off, while he flogs me, and I'm stressing. He's on the payroll, I'm on the fucking pavement.
Thanks, Jack. That was super insightful. I'm just going to get stuck straight into deconstructing this song and seeing how Dondale came together. First of all, I've got a couple of images here just from, this looks like it was outside Avery. So it was probably when we were mixing the record rather than when we were recording it. And here I've got just a snap off the Neve console there at Woodstock from when we were tracking. So this kind of gives you an idea of how it was laid out. But essentially the entire band was running through the console at any given time. So pretty much what you see here is what ended up being in the final mix. there wasn't too many overdubs done. So basically the entire thing through this one console. And you'll kind of see that Pro Tools will basically mirror this setup here. And then here we've got another snap of just some of the guitars used on it. So it looks like a Greco Rickenbacker 330 copy there. And my Rick 330 and a handful of Telecasters as well. So definitely preferring the single coil style of guitars for this record. There probably was a couple of other guitars used that were hanging around the studio, but for whatever reason, we snapped this picture here. Jumping into the session, it is a really, really simple arrangement here. What we can see here is there's a stereo pair of acoustics. All our drum tracks are here. We've got a few returns here. So I did track the hardware Bricasti reverb they have in Woodstock, as well as parallel comps with the Fatso there on kick and snare. It looks like a parallel snare distortion, which would have been through the Culture Vulture. 2 bass tracks, so a mic and a DI, nothing outlandish there. And you can see how sort of stripped back the whole thing is, where it's just 8 guitar tracks. So that's it for that. 1 single lead vocal, which was tracked live. I know that it does say Sony here, but looking back on the video and photo references, that would have been an SM7 that we're tracking live there. And I would have chosen that mic. Being a cardioid dynamic, it would have reduced some of that spill that you would have been getting from the band, some string noise and whatnot, because they were playing live there with it. When we come to digging into that, we will hear probably some spill was still captured there, but that's just inevitable. If the singer is playing guitar and singing at the same time. So I'll just go through everything one by one, top to bottom here. Let's solo the acoustics. So just double tracked there and helping fill out those larger chorus parts. And then they come back in at the end here. So probably just looking for just some percussiveness and for something to sort of just fill out those bits where there's heavier guitars playing. In terms of processing on that, very simplistic, just taking out a fair bit of that high end there. So it might have been a little bit too much percussiveness and string noise, just trying to get it to blend in. Poking out the mid-range there and a little bit of a lift in the low end as well. Onto drums. That's our overall drum sound for this song. You can hear that it is pretty naturalistic. I don't have any samples or anything like that going on with this song because I really wanted to capture the song with it just sounding like the band playing in a room together. It's such a well-written song that doesn't really need any overproduction, I don't think, or at least that's the way that I heard it and felt like it should be represented. And I think the guys agreed with me on that one. So I'll take each element of the drum kit one by one here. So we've got the overheads, which were a pair of Sony C37 tube mics. Kind of favor these on a rock band. Very nice detailed capture of the drum kit. So EQ wise, these are kind of. It sounds like I EQ'd them to be somewhat lacking in low end. Um, Probably because I was getting enough of that from the rest of the close mics and the room mics here. So it looks like just trying to get some real air out of it. That's quite an extreme EQ there on the high end. Kick drum wise, trusty old Bayer M88 again on the inside kick. And just lifting again 10K and 5K. Kind of find myself going for the similar kind of moves here. And I know how that mic reacts to EQ. So yeah, just trying to get some more natural attack out of that kick drum and some low end at 50 hertz there. Looks like a little bit of a dip at 142, generally carving out some room for bass guitar normally. So the outer kick drum was a Bach IFET. And so just looking to push some more 50 hertz low end with that. I can't hear any gating going on the bus here, but let me just have a look at what's happening EQ wise. Yeah, so just some more low end stuff there. So a shelf at 100 hertz lift there, 150 hertz lift, and some more 5K, just trying to probably get it to push through the mix there. Snare top was an SM57 in this instance. If anyone's ever recorded a drum kit with a SM57, that would be an extremely familiar sound to you. That mid-range hump there, which can either be great or really bad, depending on how the drum is tuned. On this one, I really dug the overtones that it was bringing out. It's not like the most, I guess, amazing sounding snare, but it's got a lot of character. And so I dug that on this particular recording, and it works within the context of the song. Bottom head on the snare drum was also a 57. No EQ happening on the snare top mic yet. And this here just bringing out some of the body of the snare with 200 hertz. And those two together sound like this. And again, shooting for some more body and weight on the 200 hertz there on the snare bus. So let's hear that in context with the overheads and the kick drum. So yeah, a really dry and snappy sound that we get from just the overheads and the close mics in that drum room at Woodstock there. No rack tom mic in this session, so I likely would have captured the rack tom, but if it wasn't played at all, I generally just get rid of it unless I'm really digging the spill that it's bringing to the track. But it wasn't played at all in this song, so I would have just hidden that one away. But otherwise, the floor tom was a Sennheiser 421. And let me just go to a section where that's actually being played. EQ wise, yeah, some more attack lift at 10K and 1.5K for that's stick attack. 100 hertz and 50 hertz, so almost a smiley face style EQ on that. I tend to kind of lean towards that with a 421. They capture a nice mid-range, but they just need a little bit of help poking through the mix there. Hats, Geffel M300. Yeah, same kind of deal with the floor tom. It wasn't an essential part of the drum kit. It wasn't being played much. In fact, it's only used for this count back in section.
Nothing that bad anyway. Doesn't know how lucky is. I do something.
EQ wise, just some air around 6K with a high shelf and cutting some nasty frequencies out there. Okay, onto the rooms. So these were a pair of Coles 4038, and I believe on this session I had them basically on the floor in front of the drum kit, sort of equilateral from the snare, so pointing in. Because they're a figure of 8 capture as well, you do get that reflection off the back of the room there as well. So let's have a listen to those room mics. So it looks like I'm taming some high end there at 10K and just getting some more body in depth with that 180 boost and 100 hertz boost with a shelf there. So I'm just going to put that into the context of the drum kit, and I might just toggle them in and out there as well. So hopefully you can hear there how much depth and dimension and realism they're adding to that kit. Oftentimes I find myself leaning on room mics a lot, especially in a smaller room like that. Overheads are capturing, the immediate attack and detail of the kit and cymbals, and the room's just filling in all the rest of the details that make it sound like an actual drum kit being played in a room. So yeah, that's essentially the entire drum kit there. Moving along from that, we can have a listen to some of these hardware units that were being captured in parallel. So here's that Bricasti reverb. So that's almost adding a kind of larger room ambience to that. The Fatso compressed kick. So Fatso just has this neat little trick where it adds this really sort of squishy sounding transient to kick drums and snare drums. So I really like tracking that when I can. I've actually got one of those in my rack here at the studio. Super handy, all round great compressor, and it can do amazing stuff on the 2-bus as well. So a lot of my mixes end up being summed through that as well. Here's that same Fatso on the snare. And the Culture Vulture distorted snare, which looks like I'm gating here as well. Really cool sound. Just you can see there, it's blended in quite subtly, but I find that kind of overly cranked distorted snare sound just gives so much more urgency, make it sound like the snare's being just hit that much harder. This is another common technique that I seem to gravitate towards, is having a parallel distortion bus set up that I can just send individual elements of the drums to. Here I'm sending the kick drum bus, snare drum bus, and the toms. So essentially all the pieces of the drum kit, so the shells, and I'll send them on a pre-fader send, so I can actually monitor that. that distortion and how much I'm actually getting out of it. So you can have a listen to that. I can actually solo that. You should be able to hear it. So all of that just adds up to adding a little bit more attack to the drums. And again, just that for rock drums, it makes it sound like it's being hit harder. It's a little bit more urgent. So again, I'll just play that whole drum kit all together. Yeah, really cool natural drum sound. Moving on to bass guitar, we have so it's a Neumann U67 on the cab mic there. And DI here. I believe that would have been going through Little Labs DI and then into the console there. Just a little cut in the mid-range there. And those two sounds summed together sound like this. So some nice punch and attack from the DI there, and warmth and roundness and realism from the cab mic there. So classic technique, but I find that for rock bands like this, leaning on the classics seems to work really well. EQ wise, lift at 3K here, some cutting at 180. That's probably to accommodate the kick drum a little bit, and another shelf boost at 50 hertz here for that low end extension. I do have some decapitator going on here, so just driving that API style preamp there. Not super heavy, but I'll just toggle that on and off. So just accentuating the hair that was kind of already there from that DI track. So guitars. So it looks like there is actually a guitar overdub here as well. So looking like we probably came back and hit those intro notes as an overdub. Got a nice Pixie style fuzz tone there. And let's have a look at the other guitar track that we had set up with the 421 and the Royer 121. So that looks like a completely live take to me, that one. So I'd say between these tracks and these, they were the live takes, and these two tracks here and this little overdub were all that were done separately. And this little overdub here sounds like this. Yeah, so just a ratty little distortion to accentuate that heavy section there. On the guitar bass, it looks like I have a little bit of EQ taming the high end, adding some mid and low mids there, and a decapitator that is just sort of blended in there, a little bit of drive on it to, I'd say I'd just be trying to get a little bit more excitement out of the guitars there. So let's have a listen to them all together. So it looks like all of them are also running into a reverb here. This is an algorithmic reverb that I quite dig. So it's a soft tube TSAR1. I'm not sure if it's trying to recreate anything in particular, but it kind of reminds me of that. I guess the interface looks like some of the lexicon stuff there, the hardware units, but just gives a nice non-linear algorithmic reverb sound, which sounds pretty realistic to me, I guess. Although it can kind of be super long and crazy if you want it to be. I do also have this Echo Boy set up here. Probably one of my go-tos for throwing guitar tracks off to opposite sides there, just to get some more width into a track that might only have a few guitars in it. So rather than going crazy and adding, 50 million overdubs, I kind of dig just throwing it off to a little repetitive little delay here that you can tuck in over the other side. Prime example is this track here. So let's have a listen to the lead vocal that was tracked live with the song.
I hear keys rattling, dogs barking. Some no-neck fuck's got his knee on my back, telling me I'm a risk to myself. Reckons he's looking after my health while he's stripping me naked. Hand on my throat, reckons he's a fighter. I reckon he's a coward. I reckon he's a coward. Yep.
So you can hear what I was referring to earlier when you hear this, I guess, the spill in between actual lyrics there. And that it to me is kind of acceptable. It's just a little bit of string noise. If anything, it can sometimes add to the song sounding liver, if that's a word at all.
He's a coward. Yep.
It's almost like we've emphasized that stringy electric sound anyway with the percussive acoustic in there. Whether or not that was intentional from hearing that little bit of spill, but that's what we came out with. But yeah, kudos to Jack for being able to do this one live, and it just felt so right to keep that take. I think we might have even tried doing an overdub just to see what it was like, but this was the clear winner. And to go through the recording chain here, like I said, it was the SM7 straight into those Neve preamps on the console. There was likely a little bit of EQ happening on that as well. And then this is sort of a classic chain for me because I know that it works and gets results kind of quickly. But it's a Blue Stripe 1176. This is a super fast compressor, so you can kind of really shape transients if you want to on things like snares. But I normally use it to catch like super loud peaks in the vocal.
I hear keys rattling, dogs barking. Some no-neck fuck's got his knee on my back, telling me I'm a risk to myself.
So you can see that it is digging in pretty hard on the start of phrases there, but also releasing super quickly. Then I like to use the LA2A waves recreation here, just to, I guess the way I would think about it is that the 1176 is really pushing the vocal to the front of the mix. And then the LA2A is sort of just locking it in place level wise, so you don't have to do as much automation later on. To me, it's also just a really familiar vocal sound, familiar rock vocal sound, those two pieces of gear. And here looks like we've got Decapitator as well. Little bit of drive there, but mixed in pretty subtly, I would say. Let's have a listen to that.
I hear keys rattling, dogs barking. Some no-neck fuck's got his knee on my back, telling me I'm a risk to myself. Reckons he's looking after my health.
I was going to say, I believe that one's on the Neve setting there. You can hear it in the low mids when I disengage it. Obviously, there's a little bit of a volume drop here as well when I bypass it, but just bearing that, have a listen when I bring it back in, and just have a listen to the way that the low mids fill out.
I hear keys rattling, dogs barking. Some no-neck fuck's got his knee on my back, telling me I'm a risk to myself. Reckons he's looking after my health while he's stripping me naked. Hand on my throat, reckons he's a fighter. I reckon he's a coward. I reckon he's a coward. Yep.
We could hear there that there was some effects going on. I'll just have a quick squeeze at that. So again, that TSAR 1 from Softtube. This with a bit of pre-delay here to get it off the lead vocal. And that's moderately long reverb. So let me just, I'll mute the slapback and delay here.
Dogs barking, some no-neck fucks. I hear.
So you can hear the tail of what that reverb sounds like.
Keys rattling, dogs barking.
For delays here on that vocal, it looks like I have a quarter note and a 16th note. Let me just see what's being sent to what. So just the 16th note on the vocal there.
I hear keys rattling, dogs barking. Some no-neck fuck's got his knee on my back, telling me I'm a risk to myself. Reckons he's...
Yeah, I really dig that really darkish sounding slapback there. Not many repeats on that one. And I normally dial that in just by ear on the millisecond settings on the Echo Boy here. It's sort of a thing that you need to play around with in the mix and hear, like, where that slapback should sit. So let me just pull the track back in.
I hear keys rattling, dogs barking. Some no-neck fuck's got his knee on my back, telling me I'm a risk to myself. Reckons he's looking after my health while he's stripping me naked. Hand on my throat, reckons he's a fighter. I reckon he's a coward. I reckon he's a coward. Yep.
Yeah, to me, it's what it allows that single tracked vocal to just sit there and not sound like it's just on its own in the mix and not part of the rest of the band. And it's also kind of a thing that you would hear live really often is either the slapback coming off the room that you're in. So it kind of gives you the impression that you're in either a smallish kind of space listening to the band play, or a lot of times, engineers at gigs will actually add that into their sends to front of house as well. Other vocal wise, group chants at the end here.
I'm 15, I'm 15, I'm 15, I'm 15.
Essentially, that is the entire song there. One thing that I would say about this in comparison to some of my other mixes that I've highlighted is that there is definitely less compression going on in this. Definitely going for more of a folky, natural sound on this particular track. Just a really well put together rock song, in my opinion. So that pretty much concludes the deconstruction of Dondale. Thanks so much, Jack Parsons, for joining me on the start of this episode. And thanks so much for tuning in to Mix with Greg. I'll see you on the next one.
I'm 15, I'm 15, I'm 15.